Welcome to the Create Your Happy podcast, where conscious female creators come together with a shared vision to inspire and empower women as they learn how to fully embrace their humanness, find their unique voice, and collaborate on how together we can change the world. I'm your host, Christy Holt, happiness coach and conscious funpreneur on a mission to change the world one beautiful soul at a time. All right, gorgeous, it's time to get curious and become inspired. It's time to create your happy. Welcome to this week's show. I'm so excited. I have with me today Lana Kirtley, and let me tell you, I am really excited because Lana is the healthy hormones advocate. She hosts the Blissful Balance 5-day events and the annual Heal Summit 10-day event. And in Lana's own words, empowering health journeys is kind of her jam, but it's also her business. So welcome to the show, Lana. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today. I'd love for you to start the show by sharing a little bit of your story of overcoming and what you've gone through to get to the place where you are now, creating all of your happy.
Well, first of all, Christy, thank you for having me. I get a little full, little overload happening here. So thank you. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I've always kind of been curious about biology and health and well-being. Always since a teenage kid. I'm a farm kid from Central Alberta and absolutely love it. Involved in 4-H and all of that good stuff. Always recognized that, oh, it's our hormones. And I'm going, well, boys have the same hormones we do. They just have them in different quantities.
Yeah.
That we all have these hormones. We have an amazing bucket of hormones. And so life was good as a teenager and a young woman. And I went to the University of Alberta and did my Bachelor of Science in Agriculture and love the topic, love the energy, love the people that I met there.
Yeah.
It was, let's just say my university years were fun kind of years. So it was all good.
Love it.
Yeah. And then as I went on my career journey, then realized how much I enjoyed physical activity. Let's just say it was a few years ago. I was a certified step aerobics instructor. And let's just say my farm girl voice came in great use when I was using music and step aerobics. Yeah. The guys that were across the curtain working out in the weight room didn't get to chatter much during my hour-long classes.
No, hey?
No, I could break the barrier on that sound curtain. So as I moved along and helped with wellness events with the corporations I was involved in and that sort of thing, it came to a point in time, approximately 2016, that I'm like, there's got to be something more. I don't like the career path I'm presently on. I live in a minimal agriculture community at this point in time. I'm raising my son. So I'm doing much more administrative type work. I love the people I'm hanging out with. All is great. And a bunch of tumbling blocks started to happen. Marital issues, divorce. I ended up getting laid off of a job that I quite enjoyed. I had just bought my home to try and raise my son in a stable environment. Love the cul-de-sac that I picked. But there was a bunch of blocks that fell off the precarious foundation per se.
Yeah.
And as I was getting curious about a second or third or whatever one might count it as career move, then I come across something called integrative nutrition.
Yeah.
And it really resonated with me. So I've got all this stress on the side. I'm studying like a mad woman. They say it's kind of like doing master's hours. Like if you wanted to get your master's in some topic, I'm putting in the same kind of hours in the evening as a mom, trying to do and get this. And as I was winding up with that, I heard something called hormone testing. And up until that point in time, I was struggling with migraines. Um, in just moments of absolute, my office here is in the corner of my living room. So I can still visualize me standing in the middle of my living room, losing my cool with my
Yeah.
son, who's now 20. So back up that age a little bit and going, I don't like myself.
Yeah.
And why am I losing my she hit on my son? Like he's a teenager, he's a young man, like for the love of God,
Yeah.
this is not fair. And obviously
Yeah.
it still bothers me but that's where I was at. So I heard about this hormone testing. I was just slightly about 50 at that point in time, um, and had no idea what my hormones could possibly be doing. So came at that test opportunity from a place of absolute curiosity,
Yeah.
not thinking I had really bad hormone problems myself, because the practitioners, not the Western medicine at that point, were like, well, we'll see in a week or so for another head adjustment or another acupuncture session or whatever.
Yeah.
And I did the hormone testing and I had to see a naturopath. So from where I live, I am 2 hours from the city of Edmonton. I had to find a naturopath in Edmonton that would accept my results for me to be able to do this. I'm like, I'm in. I'm curious
Yeah.
about this test. I want to understand it as um, I'm about to graduate from the IIN program. So in the meantime, I went to my local Western medicine doctor and I said, I want these and these and these and these and these and these and these testing because I wanted some version of comparison.
Yeah.
Well, kind of come to figure out from the blood work of the local Western medicine is my iron levels were really low. Didn't say a whole bunch about my hormone testing because, hey, that depends on what day in your cycle you're at.
Yeah.
Really looked at my thyroid and went, something's up with your TSH. And by then, so I took that bundle, went and seen the naturopath in the city. And he's looking through all the blood work and he goes, why'd you do all this? And I said, because I wanted to compare it to this saliva test. And he kind of looks at me and he goes, you went in the deep end. I'm like, you betcha. That's what
Mhm.
Lana does on occasion is she goes all in. Like Lana doesn't do this part way. Because I have to admit, when I took the blood requisition and left the medical, I'm like, oh, he forgot to check off this and this and this. And I just added through a little more check marks with the right colored pen and carried on with life. So
Yeah.
whatever.
Like, oh, I just needed a little bit more information.
Yeah, exactly,
The
exactly.
doctors are not terribly in my experience, it is hard to find a doctor willing to take on doing any extra tests. They
Yep.
are probably overworked. It's probably the system we're in. They're probably, not being compensated for going above and beyond. They don't have time or space to. So that's a medical shortage situation contributing,
Situation that they deal
right?
with. That's right.
And there's a lot having back this up just a moment.
Yep.
Having had a hypothyroid since was 18, so we're talking about more than a couple decades. I know as well that the testing that the doctor gives you is very, very baseline. The range in which they tell you you're fine, everything is great, is also not a range that is necessarily optimal for everyone,
Big
right?
difference. And I have another story to go with the difference between normal and what was really happening for
Yeah.
another gal. So yeah, so I went through that, went and seen the naturopath, and he's looking at it all. He's looking at the saliva results, and he goes, "You have adrenal fatigue." I'm like, I have. I think I know, kind of know what you mean. And so he's like, that hair loss? And I'm going, yeah, I just thought I needed to dye my hair blonde and not dark because of how I was losing all of it. And he goes, no, that's adrenal fatigue. He says, this midsection belly spare tire that you're fighting and you're eating less and less to try and get it gone. He says, that's hormone stuff. That's not you eating too much. I'm like, well, and so on and on it
Yes.
went.
Good
Right,
news.
exactly. It's like, holy frick. And
Yeah.
ironically enough, the local medical doctor, I then got a call and like, Lana, can you come back in and please bring, and I'm like, was there something wrong with my pap test? Oh no, she's just curious about this saliva test. I giggled to myself and I went, oh, that's interesting. I now
Yeah.
have her attention.
Hmm.
So that began that journey of, it's a little bit lonely to be diagnosed with adrenal fatigue, this wired and tired, sleeping like crap, and then middle of the afternoon, the head bob that just kind of comes out of nowhere. It's like, holy,
Well, and we're back.
right, exactly. And then it's
Where the
like,
fuck
yeah,
was
but
I for a minute there?
right. And then the next part is that thank God I wasn't driving. Oh my God, I was driving. Or it's like there's another wave coming. Like there's another wave that I could crawl under my desk and have a half an hour to an hour long snooze, wouldn't flinch me at all, kind of thing. So that whole journey of getting it figured out, and it took mind, it took food, it ended up taking a food sensitivity testing that I had to get curious because I'm like, there's kryptonites here, but I have no freaking
Blue.
idea what they
Yeah.
are. And for me, some people say, well, just do an elimination diet. It was one more thing that I knew I couldn't handle.
Yeah.
The load was big enough to tell me to try and do an elimination diet and keep these out for X amount and then introduce it. I'm like, I don't have it in me.
No space for that sometimes,
No,
right? It's just,
no,
it is a lot.
it is. I just didn't have it.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I economically am going to struggle here, but I'll have my answers in a month as compared to suspicions within 6 weeks.
Right.
So I did that. And when I picked up that test results could come back directly to me. The pharmacist said to me as he handed it, he says, I haven't seen that many red, and I think you've got my wife beat. And she had a lot of red.
Oh, wow. So that was the food sensitivities.
That was the food sensitivities. So taking the saliva test results and the food sensitivity results and realizing sleep, stress, the foods I was eating, what I thought was nutritious, as compared to how I had to really thin down my food choices.
Yeah.
Adding some supplements in, and I'm like, oh, what? 6 months later was like, holy frig, I didn't think I could feel this good again.
Yeah.
And now I've gone through perimenopause. I'm in menopause now. And I'm like, the night sweats from the adrenal fatigue, 10 times worse, 10 times worse than what I've gone through in the last 2 years or less in terms
Yeah.
of that transitioning. And that transitioning was like, piece of cake, easy,
Yeah.
well done, I got it. So but that's where my heart keeps coming back, is
Yeah.
that I don't want a woman to feel alone. And I'm tired of women being told, oh, your numbers are a little low, but they're normal. And you had pointed that out earlier.
Yeah.
It, normal to what?
Yeah. Normal compared to who? Because we're not all the same.
Yeah.
We all have, you know, different different bodies, different experiences, different things that we even the same thing we have an ability to perceive differently.
Yep.
So, even all things considered, how on earth would we define anything as normal, right? It's just maybe what's common or what is um, within the realm of their study is probably what their quote unquote normal is, but it's
Yeah.
not everyone normal.
No, no. And I have come to advocate, get your testing done now. Yeah, if you live in Canada, then it's pretty economical to do it. In the US, then, if you can have them check one more box and depending on, then it'll be covered or not covered. I understand that.
Yeah.
I truly get that. But an example of, first of all, we have to understand where they get that normal range from. Define someone who's healthy. They don't pull blood when somebody's healthy. They pull blood when somebody's got something up.
Yeah.
So that's what your normal bucket is working from. And then it's this bell curve. But if you didn't pull blood from me 6 months ago, 2 years ago, then you don't know what my levels were back then to know how much I've possibly plummeted.
Right. And there's
That's
no
why I'm,
comparison basis,
no,
right?
right. There's nothing to work from.
We don't have your baseline if we're not doing that data. And the data that they're here, anyways, again,
Comparing us with.
in Alberta, it is really hard to get a lot of this blood work done because of the
Yep.
budgetary constraints,
Yep.
right? The doctors aren't really able to do as much. The labs are reducing the number of tests and the
Yep.
type of tests that they're offering. And we are stuck with getting less information, right? And it's not giving us the whole picture. And even I found it really interesting because I have, like I said, struggled with thyroid stuff
Right.
and have been, you know, seeing plenty of doctors, endocrinologists, specialists,
Yep.
naturopaths, everything to get myself those answers because I wasn't getting it from my regular doctor. My
Yep.
regular doctor did a test, got the test back, and said, nope, you're normal. It's fine. Right? You're in the range. I don't know how many times in my life I've heard you're in the range. We're not doing anything more. And I just want to like run screaming from the building because I don't give a shit if I'm in the range if I do not feel good. I am the only one who knows if I am feeling great and feeling good, feeling healthy, feeling strong,
Yep.
or whether I'm dealing with ongoing stuff day in and day out that are
Yep.
impacting my quality of life. So it gets really frustrating. And anybody out there who has
Huge.
brought these things to their doctor only to be told they're normal, it's in the range, there's nothing wrong with you, keep pushing because if you think and feel within yourself that there is something not quite right, chances are something is not quite right. Okay. Because your intuition doesn't lie. It's just that the medical tests are not at the same the same level as they maybe used to be. And we've got, and I don't want to get into any kind of conspiracy theory things, but I just want to say, money plays a huge part in a lot of this, right? So there's marketing of pharmaceuticals. Again, I'm not getting into it. I'm not bashing big pharma. I'm observing that plays a role into it, right? That factor plays into the medical textbooks that our doctors of today learned from when they went to medical school. So simply recognizing that inherent bias towards what I'm going to call loosely a Band-Aid solution as opposed to
a prescription, a prescription care system versus a healthcare system.
Right, versus preventative. So we are it's not a healthcare system at this point, it's a sick people system, right? That actually kind of keeps people stuck in that loop because we're in there, but there's not the information, there's not the solutions. We just keep getting told, oh, you're fine, you're normal, carry on. My doctor, last time I asked actually about hormonal testing, told me they don't do such a thing.
And you know why they don't? Because they were never trained on it. And
right?
and that's not bad, but that is, be honest about it and just say, and that's my local Western doctor, God bless her, has gotten to the point. Yeah, we'll run the test, but I don't know what to do with the results. She says, but I'm starting to figure out, you will figure out what to do with the results. I'm like, yep, I will. Thank you very much, and then carry on.
But if
But
you're not pushing for, I want the test anyways, right? If you're not
right,
standing up and advocating for yourself and getting
yep,
the data that you need to make those educated decisions,
yep,
no one's going to do it for you, right?
yep.
So you've got to take that step. You've got to meet with a naturopath or, you know, try a different doctor, go to a specialist in an area, do the work so that you can get the information for yourself if no
Hmm.
one else is willing to do it for you.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
anyway,
it's okay to say we don't have the answers and to ask other people to come in,
that's right.
right? Like let's
Yep.
ask the questions. Let's stay curious. Let's stop making assumptions over what someone else's normal is. Let's stop making assumptions over the solutions and let's start getting creative, right? Because no doubt about it, there are other solutions out there.
Oh, absolutely. And I want people to understand that, it's like a gal friend that she was like, well, what's up with this perimenopause stuff? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? So we chat a little deeper and she goes, well, I was just here to the local doctor, same community as me. She goes, and they pulled some blood and the comment was everything looks normal, but they're sending me for an ultrasound. I'm like, do you have blood work from like a year ago or 3 years ago? And she goes, no, I don't have my results. So a little side note for half a second, all of those testing is your information. It's not their information. It is your information and you can always ask for copies. So anyways, she goes, gets an ultrasound done. And I said, well, get get the test results. I can look at some of the numbers. I have some reference information now in my toolkit to help
Yeah.
people. She texted me as soon as she got out of that ultrasound. She goes, guess what? And I'm like, I don't know what. And she goes, one of my ovaries has stopped producing and the other one is shutting down. I went, oh, I thought you were normal. And I was being a little bit mean, and I know that. And she goes, I don't know. It looks like my ovaries are shutting down. And I'm like, okay, now it's time to support your adrenals because most of us are never told that as our ovaries shut down, our adrenals have to pick up the pace for producing more hormones instead of just doing their little role. And when we talk about the thyroid, the first test is typically thyroid stimulating hormone, which is not really the
Mhm.
thyroid, it's the pituitary.
Yeah.
So I don't ask any woman, any person to find this as intriguing as I find it, because
Yeah.
that's my jam. Healthy hormones is my jam,
Yeah.
and supporting women is my jam. It's my thing. I love it. But having the tenacity that when you ask for testing, you hold ground on, I would like a copy, and I'm not making a decision today on what to do.
Yeah.
That's all I offer at this point in time is just, may I have a copy? And I'm not making a decision today. I need to further understand my health.
Yeah.
That's empowering. That's just like standing strong and saying, I'll freaking figure this out
Yeah. And I mean, the
for myself.
doctors, they don't have time to educate you on all of the
No.
things. And they're and I'm not saying this 'cause I'm mad about it. I'm just again observing they have a limited amount of time and a lot of people to see. So if you don't take
Yeah.
responsibility for doing a little bit of that research on your own and figuring out at least what it is that you need to be asking for from your doctor. Now, one
Yes.
thing that I learned, again, just touching back on
Yep.
this TSH, is one tiny piece of a puzzle. It's like trying to figure out if your whole clock is working by just looking at the second hand, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
It's a tiny piece. Is not telling you if it's going all the way around, and it's only like taking a snapshot of the second hand at one place and saying, "Ah, it works." Mm, does it though? Because we're not witnessing the whole process. We're not seeing it go
Right.
all the way around. We're not seeing that integrate with the other pieces. And in case of
Right.
the thyroid, I did some research on my own a number of years ago because I was like, what the fuck is going on and why can't I feel good? Um, and I discovered that there are so many integrated pieces to this. Your iron plays a massive part.
Oh,
Your
huge, huge.
cortisol plays a big part. The adrenal glands play like there's just a lot of pieces. Your hormones can
Yep.
affect it. And now, if the doctors can't figure out which of these pieces are interacting, then it's pretty not reasonable for us to figure it out without doing a little bit of effort.
Yes, yes.
So the good
And
news is you can ask someone who has done some of the research, and I'll say if you're in the thyroid thing, I found a really good resource many years ago, and it was called Stop the Thyroid Madness. It was a very educational book that taught a lot about those different pieces. So
mhm.
worth a read if someone out there listening is like thyroid conditions, even iron, even chronic fatigue kind of stuff.
Yep,
A lot of it
yep.
can be really interrelated. And so if thyroid is on your radar,
Mhm.
definitely take a look into that book. They have a website and stuff too, but I found it really informative to actually give me a picture of like, well, that's interesting. This is what the doctors look at, and this
Yep.
is what the information actually could and should look like if you were looking at the entire picture. And so I
The
found that
bigger picture.
really enlightening and empowering for me because then I could
Yep.
decide, you know what, I'm going to find a doctor who's going to do these tests for me.
Yep.
Right. And then I'm going to find a doctor who is going to work with me to try different medications, not just Synthroid, because never for one day when I was on Synthroid did I feel good.
No. Nope. Nope.
So, I actually have switched over and have spent most of my thyroid concerned time the last couple of decades on natural desiccated thyroid, which has
Yep.
worked much, much better for me. But again, it was a real push for me to get it.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I had
You
to stand
have
up
to.
and decide I'm going to learn for myself, get curious. What does this actually look like? At least the pieces
Yep.
that were most relevant to me at that point.
Yeah.
Then get really, really firm with my doctor and say, I'm not settling for less than this. These are the test results that I want to see because I want to see this whole picture and how these things are tying together.
Yes.
And then pushing for a treatment that allows me to feel good. Right. And a lot of people don't do that. They're busy, and I get it. They're overwhelmed. They're not scientists. I get it. Neither
Yeah.
am I.
It's not their
Um,
jam. It's not their
right?
jam. I
So
get it.
that's okay. So speak to people who have dealt with it if that's your case. But like it only
Yeah.
behooves you to like do a little bit of research on your part to discover, right? A little bit more about what's kind of going on so that you can start really formulating a full picture.
Yes. Well, it's so much about, we have to remember that, and the doctor, the medical people can be lovely,
Of
absolutely
course.
lovely people. But if this is not their zone of interest,
Yeah.
then let's just honor that. It's like, well, can you paint me a picture? Well, I don't like painting. Oh, but I'm gonna ask you to paint one anyways. That's not their zone of genius. That's not who they are. It's okay, but this is your vessel. It is
Yeah.
your journey. So hold fast that there is a possibility. We've been marketed to.
Hmm.
Did you know that there are only two countries in the world that pharmaceuticals are allowed to advertise? There's only two countries in the world.
Huh. Is that North America?
The United States is one. The reason why Canada gets so much of that is because we watch so much US based network that we see all of that. But the reality is that a Canadian network cannot advertise
Hmm.
pharmaceutical. What's that tell you? Then look at it and go, the foundation of many pharmaceuticals are herbs, and they've extracted one active ingredient. The reality is that that herb had several components to it that made everything work so much better together.
Yeah.
And we're pulling one piece and saying, this is your magic pill. It's not your magic pill.
Yeah. Ultimately, I don't think there is a magic pill because we're
Oh,
we're complex as humans. There's a lot of pieces coming
yeah.
together. And
Yeah.
so we've got to really look at not just, I guess, the body, right? But
Yep.
the mind, the body, the soul or spirit, all of those need to be kind of working in congruence, right?
Yep.
So that you're feeling good. It's not about being quote unquote being good on paper, right?
No,
That means
no.
nothing if you don't feel really good, if you don't feel like things are, in alignment for you,
Yeah.
that means nothing.
Well, and that was all about my journey was the fact, and the more I coach, the more I understand. The more I coach, the more I understand. Is that how do I feel about myself? What supplements and foods can I take, or should I remove one or
Mhm.
the other to further? I don't want to use the word prop up, to further heal, to further help this vessel function at a higher level.
Yeah.
And whether it was essential fatty acids, like is a huge player. I've got a little cheat sheet book that has the top 13 nutrient deficiencies in North America. Our omega-3 ratio, iron, magnesium are some of those three. And
Yeah.
OMG, what a difference it makes in our vessels functioning.
Yeah. Well, just better support. And even what you mentioned earlier, how at some points, and I'm going to tie this back
Yep,
in a slightly a different way. We talk about like, your friend's ovaries shutting down and then your body adjusting itself accordingly. Now, this is something that happens every single month in our bodies when we're having our period.
yep,
Resources are reallocated, right? So there are
yep,
maybe less resources to deal with other things. So I was doing some research because I also have monthly migraines, which are highly inconvenient. And the
yep,
research that I was doing led me to kind of uncover that when our body is going through that menstrual process, it kind of takes away some of those resources that may otherwise have been utilized to better support our body in different spaces. So
yes,
there's just a little less support overall. And so sometimes that's when these extra things can kind of pop up.
yep,
Right.
yep,
And so doing the things that we can to care for our mind, body, and soul together
yep,
really helps us to be in the most supported space, right? And by supported, I just mean the most resources available to continue moving towards your ideal lifestyle, your ideal self, your best version of this human experience, if you will, because ultimately that's what we're here to do. We're here to create an experience, and some of these things are just really getting in the way. They're kind of a party pooper. So want to take a good look at that and get those cleared out so that we can feel really good.
and it's not. Some people go, well, you're going to make me stop eating this and stop eating this and not doing this and yada yada. I'm like, well, if you want to drink from the fire hose, like I did, but I had some self motivating things that said, I'm done. I'm done. If
Yeah,
you want to drink from the garden hose, then here's a strategy. If you want to drink from the fire hose, here's another strategy. The result being, though, is do you want to consider this limiting,
right.
or do you want to feel that it's liberating? And I might not eat a lot of eggs or a lot of breads or drink much wine anymore or consume much beer anymore. I don't find that limiting. I find the lack of migraines and the fact that I can go for a walk and I can get on my motorbike. You hike freaking mountains, for God's sakes,
Yeah,
woman.
yeah,
Is that limiting or is that liberating to be able to do that?
right. It's a bit of a mindset shift, right? Because in
That's
one
all.
way, you're
Yep.
telling yourself, like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. And I'm totally guilty of it because I also I don't know, I love delicious foods and
Oh,
chocolate and eggs
yeah.
and ice cream and pizza and all the things. But when it gets to the point, and this is the differentiation here, some people change because they want to, because they want to
Yep.
feel better, they want to move
Yep.
towards, and some people need a swift kick in the arse. And they
Yep.
actually wait until they have to change, which can be a little bit more uncomfortable and a little bit more um abrupt
Yep.
when you wait to get to that place. So if you are someone who wants to just take small steps to become healthier, stronger, a better version of you, you don't have to wait. You can start that anytime. And
Yep.
they don't have to be, massive changes. when I was doing health coaching, I've always been the coach says I'm not going to tell you not to drink or eat chocolate because I could never tell you not to do that when I'm going to do that and I'm not
Yep.
going to be apologetic about it.
Yep.
But I am going to teach you how to make choices that feel aligned with the version of yourself you are aspiring to be,
Are working
right?
it towards, you're moving towards.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
And when you are working towards feeling like your highest and best self,
Mhm.
you start to make choices differently, right? You start to look at, yes, this choice, it would be really enjoyable to have this thing, but now you're aware. So now you're thinking, but last time I had this thing, I ended up feeling like shit later and I spent a lot of time in the
Mhm.
toilet and like
Mhm.
maybe that's not worth it. And so eventually you start to adjust those habits. And maybe it's not complete elimination, maybe it's just less or less frequent. No one's saying that there's hard and fast rules and you can never do the things you enjoy ever again. That would be
No, no, no. Yeah,
impossible,
no,
right?
no, no.
But being able to be empowered in that situation to make those choices and choose what feels right and feels good for
Yeah.
you and is going to move you forward is going to bring you there a lot faster the more you make those choices,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's that whole idea of, oh, I've got a birthday party on Saturday night. I'm not eating cake. I'm not eating cookies throughout this whole week. Am I going to enjoy a piece of Nana's best birthday cake concoction? Heck yeah. Am I going to
Yeah.
have a 4 by 4 square piece? No. Am I going to have a 2 by 2? Yep. Am I going to enjoy a glass of wine or some other cocktail with my friends? Yes. Am I going to have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? No, probably not, because
Yeah.
I like the next day as much as I love the community I am with at
Yeah.
that moment.
Right. So
And I
making
want,
choices
yeah,
that sustain you not just in the moment feeling good,
yeah,
but are going to leave you feeling good later,
yeah,
i.e., not beating yourself up later, feeling
yeah,
guilty about what you did, not feeling physically ill later because you've overdone it.
yeah.
Right? And this is okay because we've all done these things, and it's not at all to shame you if that's where you're at.
Guilty as charged. Guilty
um,
as charged. Guilty as charged. Like,
I gotta be honest with you. I still do. I still eat things and then sort of semi regret it later and be like, that wasn't a great choice. But I don't beat myself up over it because
no.
frankly, that would just endure my own suffering and make me feel shitty for a longer period of time. So when you make that shift, you realize, oh, I actually just every choice I make contributes to who I'm becoming.
Yeah.
Then you can make those empowered choices and operate from that space of like, this is going to make me feel good, not just for 10 seconds while I'm eating it, but I'm going to continue to feel good. And I'm not going to waste my day tomorrow, or I'm not going to be stuck in the bathroom later. Those are just kind of, and I say this as common sense, but like I know because I have some sort of lactose intolerance and it doesn't always stop me from from eating the things. Willpower. Oh my gosh, it's really hard. So if you're out there and you're like, it's so good, I know I get it. Um, but just making those choices, right? Because you're the one who's dealing with the consequences, no one else. So make those choices
Yeah.
for you, okay? And
Yeah.
if you want to enjoy that cake, oh my god, girl, enjoy that cake and don't feel
No,
bad about it.
that's so, Chrissy, absolutely. Enjoy it, love it. No, no verbiage, no negative
No
verbiage going
shame.
on here. No negative verbiage afterwards, because that negative is negative mojo, and we do
Don't eat it.
not need it.
Nope.
Instead, say, I loved it, I enjoyed it. I just don't need to consume it again tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And it's like, oh, there's leftovers. Somebody take this stuff home, because
Yeah.
it's not staying in my house, because I do not need it. I loved it. Thank you. Somebody else take this home,
Yeah.
because
Sharing is
tomorrow,
caring.
right, right, exactly. Because I want to go for a hike up a mountain. I want to go
Yeah.
on a motorbike ride. I want to go paddling with my children. Whatever the case is that my body can sustain this amount. I don't need to take up this amount.
Yeah. And you don't need ultimately what we want to do, that's exactly what I say. I love to do the things that allow me to go hiking, to go exploring, to go kayaking,
Yep.
to do those physical things, to go walk with a friend for 3 hours, right?
And yep.
And not think anything of it, or to go hike up a mountain. for
Mhm.
6 hours and not feel like, okay, maybe I'm going to feel a little bit like I'm going to die when I'm hiking up there. I'm going to absolutely bitch and complain quite a bit when it's hard, but I can still do it, right? And
Yes.
I'm here to live to tell the next day about it. So, but I'm just saying this because hiking up a mountain is not easy, even when I'm fairly fit. I just want to say that it is tough.
Yeah.
It's challenging, right? So if anybody out there is saying, "Oh, I couldn't do that. It's way too hard, and it's hard, so I can't." No, you can. You start small, you build up, and then you just build the things into your routine to take care of yourself,
Yes.
so that
Yes.
you have the resources available to go do the things that really excite you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
tell us, Lana, a little bit about projects that you're working on or
Oh,
offers that you
oh,
have. I know I mentioned a couple in the intro, but tell us a little bit more about what those look like.
sure. I will. Thank you. Blissful Balance is 5 days. It's about kicking the stress. It's about energizing. It's about rejuvenating sleep. It's about vibrancy.
Yeah.
It is what I consider the first steps of awareness
Mhm.
that there is possibility and it is well within someone's reach. Plus, I give some tidbits on, hormone stabilizing and what might be happening. But we're all so unique. I stay very cautious about that aspect. And at any point in time, now or whether you hear this podcast mid-November or whenever you hear it, please know that you can reach out to me and we can have a conversation. No pressure, just let's have a conversation. And then the first part of January, I've hosted three summits now or conferences, and I'm starting to do this annually. I am so I've started manifesting the January summit, and
Awesome.
it's all about your amazing journey. What are you going to do in 23? And I've got people that are going to talk about hormones and thyroid. I've got a friend doctor that is all about libido. I've
That's
got
important too.
absolutely. I like mojo. I
Yeah.
like a little bit of vavoom on both sides of the coin. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Um,
We talked about sex on a recent episode of the podcast. So if you haven't checked that one out, you definitely need to go back and check that
there,
one out because
see,
it is
yeah.
important. Anyways, carry
Oh,
on.
yeah, it's part of that vibrancy thing. What else is happening with the blissful balance? Blissful balance is just 5 easy days, and I try and keep it. Let's put it this way: I've dealt with stress to the level of adrenal or chronic fatigue, an extreme hormone imbalance. Let's put it this way: I'm not up to doing that to someone else,
Yeah.
so we keep it chilled. And then the Heal Summits, I haven't figured out the final name as of recording time here, but it is going to be approximately 20 speakers, and you can invest in recordings or just listen to each day. There's going to be a gift box, quite possibly, and then we'll wrap it up with a 3 day mini workshop. And I'm just super excited to provide value, to
Yeah.
provide insight, to provide concept of planning out, empowering your health journey for 2023. So, yeah, that's kind of my projects and what's happening in the bucket. I call it my stew and my soup of, I don't know, I got lots going on.
Yeah, I
So,
feel the same. I always have multiple projects going on, things that I'm really passionate about. And ultimately, just like you, it's very much about, okay, I did this, I walked through this shit, and I figured stuff out, and it probably took me longer than it could have. And so, from this side, I want to reach back, I want to extend a hand, I want to help those who are still stuck in the
come
muck
on, come
and
on,
just
come
bring them
on.
alongside, right? It's
Yeah,
like setting a space at my table, inviting them to come along because I really want truly to help people to be their best selves, to create their happy, and
yeah,
whatever that looks like for them, because that's different for everyone,
yeah,
just to create their best life.
yeah.
So, where are people most likely to find you and find a little bit more information about all of your exciting goings on?
Empowering health journeys. It's fundamentally, if you were to Google that, then that's where I'm at. Empowering health journeys. Facebook, LinkedIn. You can find me via Lana Kirtley.
Okay.
Show notes. I'm pretty sure we'll cover
Yep.
a lot of
We'll
this.
have the website for sure.
Yep. And in Facebook, then I also have the women's group. It's Women Transforming Their Hormones. It's a
Awesome.
supportive community. We're doing chit chats, we're doing insight type of posts, just
Yeah, and I
really
think
supporting it all.
ultimately we're not meant to do this whole thing called life
No,
alone. We're meant to do
no.
it in community, and that is a big piece of what is often missing these days in the social network sort of way of operating,
Hmm.
is that we tend to be a little bit missing on those closer connections, that community support, and those people really bringing those people alongside of us that can actually take us further faster. So that's so
Well, and
important.
that's, yeah, exactly. It's like, talking to someone and, well, my girlfriend's never dealt with pelvic floor issues, incontinence, whatever. So she can't relate.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I built this community is let's talk about libido. Let's talk about pelvic floor. Let's talk about, oh, frick, whether it's myofascia or whether it's talking about supplements or whatever. It is the village.
Yeah.
We, 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 we weren't built to live out in the back 40 all by ourselves and never interact. Our children need the village.
Yeah.
We need the village of interaction and saying, what do you do about this? And am I the only one? And then five other women chime up and go, hell no, you're not the only one. Like, no.
And I think too, especially women at the perimenopause,
Yep.
menopausal age, um, often having teenagers while going through that. So, oh my God, the hormones all the fuck over the place. Um,
Yeah, we've got a hormone she show happening here, people.
hormones everywhere.
Yep.
And then at the same time, an interesting perspective that I remember reading about, as we have teenagers, their problems are no longer ours to share. So we can end up as mothers feeling like we've got not only our own shit show of hormones and whatever else is going on, but we've got our kids'
Yep.
struggles and challenges and
Yep.
their stuff, but those are not ours. They're not ours to take on. So to be
Nope.
clear about that, that's not ours to take on, but it does weigh on us in a way because we're mothers. We love our children. We want the best for them. And yet those aren't our stories to share. So it can be really difficult to create that community and share and speak freely when that's not our business to share what specifically is happening with our kids. So it's a fine, tricky
It
balance.
is. It is. And what I'm starting to understand is that when one woman of the village understands more, her daughters, her daughter in laws, her granddaughters all receive that information
Yeah.
in some way, shape, or form. We start to open up doors of conversation. We start to open up the doors of love to say, hey, what's happening? And somebody saying, I don't know, I'm on my period. And that can happen at a lot of different ages, not at 14 years of age. Thank you very much.
Maybe even at 43.
Yeah, yeah, possibly, just possibly.
Yeah.
But it's that village of women that perpetuates that this is not a dirty subject
Yeah.
and that it just becomes a beautiful village of women
Yeah.
understanding. And we better understand our males world as well in that process. And if we slowly become a little more open about that conversation, our men become wiser about what chaos happens in the feminine body and what's happening possibly in their own bodies.
Yeah. And I think the more curious we are, the more open and explorative we are to talking about maybe things that haven't typically been spoken about publicly before. I love the feminine energy rising and talking
Yeah.
about the shit that shall not have been previously named,
Right,
you know?
exactly.
But
Exactly.
it's important to bring those things to the light, just like it's important to bring those maybe what we would perceive as darker bits of ourselves need to be brought to the light, because in taking them into the light, we can see that they're not as
Mm,
terrible as they
mm,
were.
mhm,
We can
mhm.
see that there is that we're not alone in our struggles, in our
Right.
challenges.
Yeah.
And the more that we rise up together and do this, the more we empower others to do the
Mhm.
same. So, that's obviously the vision with the podcast. And so this fit right in perfectly. I want to
It,
wrap up
yep.
by giving you an opportunity. I know you've got something amazing to share. For the listeners who resonate with any part of this conversation, can you share with them one practical tip or tool that they can take and implement today in order to boost their health and create more happy?
That they are worthy, that they are absolutely worthy. One suggestion I have is that you might be going, yeah, but I don't get it, or yeah, but I said this, or but whatever. Start with you are worthy. And I'm going to offer a suggestion. It's called habit stacking, per se.
Mm,
Every time you wash your hands, look in the mirror and use some type of verbiage around, I love you, you've got this, girl, you're doing awesome, just keep going. You are worthy.
yeah.
It is not for someone else, it is for
Mm,
yourself. And it is amazing what our bodies will do when we up our energy to a more love energy.
yeah.
So just start there with, I love you, you've got this, girl, you will figure this out. Step into that space, and it's amazing what comes, what is served on a silver platter.
Yeah. When you just shift into that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And for anybody, I know that I've worked with a few clients that actually have a hard time looking themselves in the face and saying, I love you. And that's okay. So, in order to meet those folks where you're at, I just want to say it's okay to say, I'm learning to love you. You can say that to yourself too.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Or just for
Absolutely.
this moment, I love you. Or I don't, you could even break this one down with bold, bold honesty and say, I have no fucking clue how to love you, but I'm trying and I'm going to
And
figure it
I
out.
will figure it
Right.
out. I will figure this out. Yeah,
Yeah, so
Crystal, that's
figuring it
right.
out and moving forward, you are beyond worthy simply for existing. And when you grasp that for all it's worth, it changes everything. Thank you so much, Lana, for being on the show. I appreciate you.
Thank you,
And I
Crystal.
know that there's so much goodness to be taken out of this. So thank you so much for sharing this space with me.
Thank you for your time and this platform. I really appreciate the conversation.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. I trust you were inspired to take back your power and create your happy. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share the show with women in your life who could use a little extra inspiration today. If you'd like to connect with myself and or today's guest, you can find those details in the show notes. We would love to hear from you. If you've got an inspiring story to share, you can also apply to be a guest on the show at createyourhappy.ca. As always, get out there, have fun, be you, and create your happy.